My hero has returned.
Yes, I have.
And you have completed the quest I've given you. You've searched and found the lost gem of Orna. And you have defeated and slain the evil wizard. And also slept with his 3 wives.
And how do you know we're that wise woman?
Well, word gets around. And as promised, here is your reward. In this sack, you will find a very special armor. This armor will give you plus 5 kilograms to your carrying weight. It is also 50% fireproof. And it will also give you immunity to poison. But on top, between the hours of 5 a.m. and 6 a.m., you will be totally invisible. On top of that, it should make you feel stronger and harder.
You know, lady, the only thing that feels harder here are my nipples.
Hello Chappets, and welcome to another Board Games Everybody Should ... video. And I'm sorry to scare you with my nudity, but hey ho. In this video I'm going to be talking about the game Dungeons & Dragons, the board game, which is an older game, so it might be a little tricky to find if you watch this video and you decide that you want to get it. So pre-warning there. And the reason that I'm doing an older game is the fact that it's been hitting the table quite a bit here recently, so I thought I might as well give it the advantage of having a how to play and review. A little bit about this game. It's based on, obviously, Dungeons and Dragons, the role-playing game, and in particular the 3.5 version, because some of the characters in this are actually in this. And some of the characters that are in this, which come out about the same time, are in this and in this. And if you don't know what this is a Dungeons & Dragons Choose Your Own Adventure DVD, which I thought would be quite popular, but unfortunately, no, it kind of came out and then disappeared, which is a shame. But anyhow, in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to set this game up. I'm going to show you how the game plays, and then I'm going to give a review of the game, and then I'll be telling you whether it's my cup of tea or not, and then I'll leave it up to you to decide whether this is a game worth searching into the deepest dungeons for, or not. In Dungeons & Dragons, the board game, one player will be playing as the Dungeon Master. They will have this rule book, and they will have all these missions in here. Now you can play these missions from start to beginning, or just pick missions at random. You will also be telling the story and controlling all the monsters here. Whereas the other players will be choosing one of the heroes, or maybe more of the heroes, to control, to live the story, and to fight these monsters. Once a Dungeon Master has been chosen, they will pick one of the missions for the heroes to go through. You can either go through it, as I said, from the first mission all the way to the end, continue a campaign, or just choose a mission at random. They will then place out the map tiles for that story as depicted in the Dungeon Master's guide. Each hero player will take one of the heroes that they wish. Again, if you're playing with less than 5 players, you may end up playing 2 or maybe more heroes. The Dungeon Master will tell the heroes what level the mission is, and that will determine what starting items the heroes will have. Once you've chosen your character, you'll take their figure and their character board. They also come with a little character card as well, which explains their special power, and that you also have their starting equipment depending on what the Dungeon Master tells them their level is. And then you place this in their hands. On the left hand side of the character sheet here, this is what they're holding in their hand, and in this case, in Ragdar's hand, we can carry 2 weapons and 1 artifact. And then we have his backpack. Any items will go in his backpack on that side there. How many things can he carry in his backpack? It's marked here, 4. His defense armor class is 2, so any monster attacking him would have to do more than 2 damage to hurt Ridgar, and he can move up to 4 spaces. There's also a special power here which is abbreviated, but it's marked on this card as well. You'll also take a little peon, a little token like this, and mark your health and magic levels with them. This will keep track of how strong you are until you die, and again you'll have a different amount of health and magic depending on what level mission you're doing. You're going to need to create a treasure chest deck from all the remaining equipment cards. Now these equipment cards come in 4 different types. There are special items which are used depending on the quest. So the Dungeon Master will read the quest, and if it says, oh, one of the chests there's this special sword, or one of the monsters has this sword on them, then you put that by the side ready to be used. The other treasure chest cards, equipment cards, as you can see, there's booby traps, there's weapons, there's magic potions, and there's artifacts, and there's spells. And they are in 3 different levels, level 1, level 2, and level 3. And depending on the level of the quest, for instance, if you're doing a level 2 quest, that means that you will use all the level 1 items and all the level 2 items and mix them together into a deck, and that will be your treasure chest deck. The Dungeon Master will have to prepare all the monsters for the quest as well. Looking at the quest sheet, you can see how many different monsters are going to appear during the course of the story. In this story, there's going to be 6 goblins. There's a big deck of monster cards which contain all the monsters, and they all have different numbers. There's 6 goblins here. They all basically do the same. They have their armor class, their health points, and how far they can move, and what they do to attack. The only difference is they have numbers on them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, as do the minis themselves. They have little numbers on the back, so when they're in play, you know that if Goblin 4 takes any damage, you can mark it on Goblin 4's card with one of the little tokens. Talking of tokens, the Dungeon Master will have to place all the tokens that he needs right next to him. These will include doors and treasure chests, and also some 3D terrain like these 3D trees. Ooh. And then of course there are dice. The Dungeon Master will tell the heroes which room they'll be starting in on the map. He'll place a door depicting where they can get out, and then the heroes can then place their characters as they wish in whatever square they want. The Dungeon Master will then read out the flavoured text explaining the story of what has happened, and also point out the objective for the heroes. Then the heroes are ready to fight and play. Not quite. There's one final thing that needs to be done. There are these 5 cards. These are the initiative order cards. These are numbered 1 to 5. These are shuffled and dealt to each hero and the Dungeon Master, and this will determine the order of play. Now, during the course of the game, whenever a door is opened and a room is revealed, these cards get collected and then redistributed at random, so the player order will change every time the heroes adventure off into another space. So that's how the game setup works. Let's show you how the game plays. On a hero's turn, depending on your initiative order, you will take 2 actions. One of those actions is to move, and you can move up to the number of spaces as indicated by your character sheet. So in this case, Josin can move 5 spaces. It's always orthogonal, never diagonal. Heroes can pass through heroes, monsters can pass through monsters, but monsters can't pass through heroes and vice versa. A hero character can open a door for an action. You turn the tile over, and the Dungeon Master will reveal what is in that room. Ta-da! Just like magic, all of a sudden there are 2 goblins, 2 treasure chests, and a door in this room. A player will collect all the initiative cards, shuffle them, and redistribute them. That will determine the player order. Another action players can do is they can attack or cast spells that attack. Jozan here can attack this goblin with a melee weapon because he's in a space adjacent, like this sword. What he'll do is he'll roll the coloured dice as marked by this sword and then count up how many results he has. So in this case, 2 orange dice and a yellow. You roll the results. He has done 3 damage. You compare that with the armor class of the goblin, which is 1. And so he blocks 1 of the 3 damage, which means that 2 of the damages seek through his armor, meaning that he will take 2 points of damage, and you will use the little tokens to mark that. Ranged weapons, like this bow and arrow, will only work if you have clear line of sight from the center of your square to the center of your target square. Again, you roll the dice indicated and compare damage. Some spells need line of sight and some don't. Again, you just roll the amount of dice and you deduct the amount of mana points depending on which character you own. Players can search a chest by either being on the space next to or being on top of the chest. Remove the token and simply take a card from the top of the treasure chest deck, unless the Dungeon Master tells you otherwise. Another action is you can change an item from your backpack to your hand, so that would cost 1 action to swap that spell to be that spell. Also, heroes that are stood next to each other can exchange items for 1 action. One special action is to search for traps. At the beginning of the game, only Leader can do this. It's a simple case of rolling this special dice, and it will tell you if you, 1, if you haven't found any traps, 2, if you found 1 trap, or maybe more, or if you're convinced that there are no traps in this room. If you manage to find a trap, the Dungeon Master will place a trap, if there is one in that room, in the nearest space next to that character. To disable this trap, only Lyda can do this, she would need to be on top of this trap and then she'd roll another special dice. This trap dice will then let her know if she's managed to deactivate it or if it blows up in her face. Another special action, and this one's for Jozan, is he can turn undead being a cleric. There's a turn undead dice which has skulls on it. You just roll this dice and the number of skulls will represent how many undead monsters will miss their next turn. And another Jozan's special power is to heal, but any character can probably get this later on. Healing will heal all the characters in the same room by 1 point, but it'll cost them 1 mana. And finally, sneaking, which is a Leader trick. She can pass through spaces with monsters. So while the heroes are exploring the dungeons and killing off all the Dungeon Master's monsters, there may be a case when a hero finishes their turn on a particular space as marked in the Dungeon Master's guide. That space may contain a trap, at which point the DM will shout, "Trap!" and then read out what kind of trap it is. There are lots of different types of traps, from pit traps to respawning traps and even poison dart traps and things like that. For the Dungeon Master, when it's his turn, he can only move and attack with his monsters. So it could be a combination of 2 moves or 2 attacks, or a mix of attack and move. After he's applied the action for a monster, he taps that card before applying another monster and then tap that card after. And then finally, when all monsters have been tapped or the Dungeon Master does not wish to move anymore, play passes to the next player. Here's some of the weapons. Some of them are basic weapons which will give you coloured dice. Yellow dice are the lightest and have the least amount of successes on them, whereas orange dice are stronger, red dice and then purple dice are even stronger still. Some of the weapons will let you re-roll the dice. Some of the weapons will tell you to roll this special star dice, which will either increase the power of the weapon, destroy the weapon, or let you gain magic with it. The many different types of magic potion in this game can be used whenever you want. They do not cost action points. They just drink them and then discard the card unless the card says otherwise. Artifacts will normally give you a bonus to armor or give you the ability to do other powers or other skills. They might let you sneak. So if you're not normally used to sneaking, you might be able to sneak. Or if you're not able to do magic, it might allow you to do magic. And then spells. Spells can only be used by those that can do spells. And of course, if you're melee, you will take the amount of mana points that it costs. And if you're Jozan, you'll take those amount of mana points. If your hero is killed because you've got no more hit points left, you remove your character from the board and place a little token depicting your symbol. That will stay there to the whole of the quest unless somebody revives you. But if nobody revives you, then you can come back for the next quest. So the game will continue going back and forth. The heroes will be exploring and exterminating all the monsters, while the DM will be placing out new obstacles for the heroes to encounter. The game will finish when either the heroes have completed the objective as by the mission, or if all the heroes are all dead, that means that the DM has won. That is sum up Dungeons & Dragons, the fantasy adventure board game. It is a board game that every Dungeons & Dragons enthusiast should avoid. I've got a big bugbear with this game, but I keep playing it still. I'll explain why later. But the bugbear is it's not really Dungeons & Dragons, apart from the fact that the characters are named after the 3.5 edition of Dungeons & Dragons, and the weapons and the spells are the same name, and it's supposed to be in the Dungeons & Dragons universe, but it is just very, very a thin layer, a varnish painted on top of what is essentially Hero Quest copy. Yes, this is very similar to Hero Quest. But then again, a lot of dungeon games are the same. In comparison to Descent, this is like Descent 0.02. Okay, this is very basic. It is a basic move, explore, exterminate for the heroes. For the Dungeon Master, you've got no choice. You have to just kind of let the heroes win in that respect. But the story, the missions is all really, really thin and pathetic. Let's have a closer look at the components, including the rulebook. Starting with the rulebook. The rulebook is really very thin, kind of very quick, explaining that this is a door, you open it. This is a chest, you open it. This is a monster, you kill it. It's very thin. Even the line of sight is very thinly explained. In regards to the mission book, the mission and the story is very thin. It's go here, kill that. And the story just is very lackluster and very, very dishwater Dungeons and Dragons. Heroes, remember the Sheriff of Hollybrook has left a warning about the Shadow's Keep. Okay, defeat the 3 wraiths and open the inner gate to the castle. It is just basically, you start here, you go here, and that is it. There's 11 missions in this story, so there's a good bit of play time in it. Let's talk about some of the other components of the game. The cards are of good quality. The color coding is great. The fact that you got to sort them out at the beginning of every game, level 1, level 2, etc. It can be a bit of a pain, but it works really well. These nice little stand-up tokens, the trees and the pillars is pretty, but everything on the board is going to move all the time. The doors will move. You'll put it there, and halfway through the game, you'll notice that the door is gone over here, and then it's like, oh, look in the map. Oh, it goes there. The minis are nice. They're nice, good, solid plastic. You will have trouble reading the numbers on the back, which again is a nice idea that ties in with the monster cards, so you know which monsters have activated, which monsters haven't activated, and obviously their hit points. But in regards to the minis, the bases are too big. When you got all the minis in one space, they just about fit on the squares, and sometimes they knock each other off the squares, especially when you get the bigger bugbears and the but that's a minor quibble. These little tokens are very Hoover friendly. You'll find them 3 weeks later somewhere else in your house. It all works. It's all functionable. My favorite part is the dice. The dice are nice quality. The fact that there's so many different dice that do different things, as well as attack. A nice element. The box insert is cute and adorable. It holds everything really, really well. The dice there, the cards there, the monsters and other bits there. The player cards, nice and solid, but as I said, these little tokens will slide around and you'll lose how many hit points you have. In regards to gameplay, the game just feels repetitive after the first couple of missions. You're just going around and beating the crap out of everything, which is not much fun for the Dungeon Master. For example, the Dungeon Master may have long periods of waiting for the heroes to clear a room when the room is empty already. So if there's treasure chests, you're waiting for these heroes to go around and decide who can search which treasure chest, because for example, Lyda has an advantage. When she searches a treasure chest, she takes 2 cards from the deck and chooses one, puts the other one back. So if she chooses if there's a trap and a treasure, she's going to discard the trap to take the treasure, or she'll choose the better treasure. And so you'll have a lot of waiting around. Again, if the heroes are convinced that a room is filled with traps, the Dungeon Master is going to have to wait for them to search them. Also, it's a case of rolling the dice. Is there any traps here? No, can't find any. Still can't find any. Oh, there's one. The nearest one next to Lyda, searching. Yeah, it's there. And then Lyda will go along and she'll disarm the trap, because for her, disarming a trap, if she disarms 3 of them, she gets a hit point back. And so you'll have these long pauses of empty rooms, or rooms that have been emptied because all the monsters have been killed, while the heroes are walking around doing stuff. Again, a strategy that works for the heroes is having them put their barbarian right in front of a doorway. And then they have their healer to the side, they'll have their wizard behind and their little rogue behind them as well. And so the monsters have no chance. They have to attack the barbarian, who's the strongest. The healer would heal them. The magic thrower will throw magic past the hero to destroy that monster, so the next one can come along, and it'd be like setting up dominoes and knocking them down. It's a strategy that is rather boring after a while, and the Dungeon Master will want to try and make the game a bit more interesting, but you'll end up with these stalemates where the monsters are all over here and the heroes are all over here, and it's like, well, come through this door, and it's like, no. Just like in Hero Quest, it's, it needs some kind of other system to make it so heroes will want to go that side, or monsters will want to come to the other side. But there is nothing in the rules that say that the heroes should play like that and the monsters should play like that. One of the nice things that happened when this game came out is the fact that there was a website that you can go to and play some games which would unlock downloadable content, and then you could download bits of map that you could print off on your printer, and there were cards as well. I don't know where mine have gone, but there were extra potion cards that you could download which were stronger than the ones that you get in the base game. There are also 2 expansions. Now, I haven't played these expansions, but I have taken the cards out and the monsters and the heroes and mixed them in with the base game here just to have a bit of fun. But you've got this one here which includes some tiles which are icy, and it also includes flying mechanisms. There's a flying dice that you roll to either fly or levitate. And then you have this one here which has quite an interesting story about 2 brothers. I really would like to play this one eventually, but it's getting around to it. It's got some shrubbery as well. Everyone loves a bit of shrubbery. But yeah, so why do I keep playing this game? One of the reasons this game's been hitting the table a lot is due to the fact that my daughter wants to play it. She likes this exploring and being the hero and killing monsters and stuff. And she also likes being the Dungeon Master and creating her own stories. And her stories include lots of empty rooms with a few chests and maybe 1 monster. And then the end room has 15 monsters which kill you within a couple of turns, which is a great story. But the fact that the missions are very, very, very thin gives you a chance to treat it like a sandbox and create your own stories. I play this with my daughter, and for each room I explain what kind of room it is. Maybe it's an old wine cellar, or maybe it's a place where lots of orcs are dead already and the smell is toxic, and so you have to roll a dice. I had that Dungeons and Dragons exploring kind of storytelling, and also add more danger to each room element to the game, because the pit traps alone and the spear traps are quite boring because my daughter kind of knows that this room's probably got traps in it, and then she'll spend ages searching for those traps. But if I make a bit of story which explains that this room was the ancient toilet of the goblins, and that's why it smells, and then that's why you have to do a toxic run through because you're gonna die, because you're gonna lose 1 hit point for each time that you're in that room, that gives her that motivation to move a bit faster into the game. Another reason that I enjoy playing the game is when I play it, I load up Syrinscape. Now, you've probably been hearing some of the sounds and ambiances that Syrinscape uses, makes, creates. This is a fun system, so I can have a dungeon sound going on, and then when there's a fight and she rolls the dice, I decide whether the sword hits like this. Technology is great, isn't it? Or if like someone throws an arrow and it hits someone, or if it misses completely. Yeah, and when there's a door opens, we do the door sound. All of that makes this game a bit more fun and a bit more enjoyable, and then there's the triumph and the heroes have succeeded. Or, something goes wrong. Yeah. So that, as well as creating your own stories and introducing new elements to each adventure, make this game fun. So that way, this game works as a sandbox. And in fact, I believe that maybe Dungeons and Dragons players bought this game and they just used the components to play out their battles with, and not actually play this game, because this game is just light fluff, and there are a lot more games at the moment which are a lot more challenging for adult players and a lot more interesting for child players. So Dungeons and Dragons is a clone of Hero Quest, but let's talk about some of the differences which make Hero Quest the better game than Dungeons and Dragons. Number one is that the stories and the adventures were a lot more interesting. It wasn't always a case of go here, kill that, and that's it. There were cases where you had to rescue someone, and when you did, it would trigger an event which would make something else happen. The traps, again, were a lot more interesting. Sometimes it was pit traps, but sometimes there was a rolling boulder. One of the annoying things was the movement in Hero Quest is the fact that it's done by dice. You roll and you move. So if you roll a 1, you're not moving that fast, especially when there's a big boulder chasing you. Again, swing traps were interesting because they affected a number of spaces, and sometimes they were triggered by something else that happened somewhere else on the board. And there was always some kind of story element which was not just there to coat the cake and make you want to eat it, but it was there and you actually felt it inside the cake that you ate. Yes. One of the drawbacks for Hero Quest for me at the moment is the fact that there's a lot of more text on the cards than there is for Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons has a lot less text, and it is mainly just the dice, which is great for my daughter because she doesn't read a lot of English. And so that helps the fluidity of the game as well, because you're not always reading that, okay, this card adds, this adds 1 extra dice on combat. Talk about the combat dice, I prefer, that's probably the saving grace of why I've still got the Dungeons and Dragons game here, is that the combat dice are interesting. The weapon that you use will give you, if it's more powerful, it'll give you more powerful dice or more dice. And so it gives you a better chance of it actually doing any damage against an armor class. Whereas in Hero Quest, it was a case of you roll X amount of dice and hope that you get hits. And all the dice were the same. And then the other good thing was the defender could roll dice as well, the same dice, and hopefully get some blocks. Hero Quest also gave you scenery, tables, chairs, thrones, fireplaces, and that made each mission seem distinct, not just because it was the same board all the time, whereas in Dungeons & Dragons you have these double-sided tiles, but it just made it a bit more interesting. There was something to look for. You know, is there anything on that table? Can I search the table for treasure? Can I search this room for trapdoors? Trapdoors. That was something that was never in Dungeons & Dragons. Also, in between missions, if you were doing a campaign, you could spend the gold that you found in this to buy better weapons. Whereas in Dungeons & Dragons, it's just a case of you have to find these better weapons. And as the adventure goes on, you're going to get more different level cards in the treasure deck. So you're going to get level 2s eventually and then level 3s. But what'll happen is there'll be a lot of level 1s in there. So you'll be searching all these treasure chests and finding a lot of level 1 cards, which don't do jack. But then again, it kind of ratios out quite well there, I think. So there you go, Dungeons & Dragons. It's not an essential game. I wouldn't recommend you go out and track this down because it is a lot more expensive than what it should be, especially nowadays, because it's quite an older game. In comparison to Hero Quest, it's not as good, but as I said, for me, the saving grace was this super dice mechanic that they had. If you are looking for a game for your children, which is like this, I would recommend something else modern. Mice and Mystics has this fantastic story, and again, you play with your children against the game itself, so there's no one playing the bad guy. It's just heroes, and you all win together or you lose together, and that's a nice element in comparison to this, because with this it's the parent against the kids, and the parent feels this obligation to let the kids win, and that's kind of traditional with Dungeons and Dragons. The Dungeon Master just kind of takes these guys on an adventure. He sets up the story and it's there. In this game, there's no competition, there's no scaling. So if you were playing against 2 kids, they both got to take on a hero each. You can't just have one hero for each player, because the dungeon is mapped out to be, against 4 heroes, not 2 heroes. Maybe Super Dungeon Explorer would probably be a good one as well for your children, because it's kind of gauntlet style, kind of just go in there and attack everything. If you're an adult, you're going to want something a bit better and bigger. Descent is obviously a very easy choice. It adds stories and it adds a challenge, so you're not just one side playing very softly against another one which is attacking all the time. You are both going tooth and nail against each other, both sides, the dungeon master and the hero. It is a real battle to try and win the game, instead of just a walkover to let the heroes win and continue playing, hopefully, because that's what you want. You want to continue playing, you want to carry on going, you want to take this story further, you want your friends to enjoy themselves and your children. But in this game, you find that you won't enjoy yourself, because you'll just be going through the motions. Okay, I move here, oh, he's dead. Oh, I move here, oh, he's dead. Okay, you find treasure, yeah, there you go. You rich, you won the game. Okay, let's set up the next scenario. And that's not a great idea of fun. It might be for you, and that's why I add in the element of storytelling and I add in the sound effects. It gives me something else to do while my daughter is piddling around with her heroes and clearing out all the chests in the room. It's not bad. It was probably great at its time, but as I said, there was something else that came along before it which was greater. So there you go, that's Dungeons and Dragons. I hope this video has informed you whether or not you should search this out. I think this is a game mainly for nowadays for a collector more than just someone that wants to play games, because it's nice, but it's not that great, and there are games that have superseded it now. So if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumb up, like it, share it, tell the world about it. If you like what I do, I have my boardgameseverybodyshould.com site, so you can go along and see all the other reviews that I've done. If you really enjoy what I'm doing, obviously subscribe to this video, and you want to help out, I have set up a Patreon. Patreon is a site that you can go to and you can throw a few dollars my way, which will help contribute towards buying a new camera, new equipment. And you can also get yourself some promos and bits and pieces for your other games if you wish to. Okay, so all that remains for me to do now is say thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time on another video. So ciao for now, and remember that you don't have to own every game that's out there. You just need to own a few good ones, and hopefully I'm pointing you in the right direction of which good ones are the good ones for you.
Oh, wow. I rolled a 1. I believe I've earned a critical failure song, gentlemen.
Just sitting at the table next to Felicia would be quite nice.
solo, just me and my tail. Why is it when I say I like board games, people look at me obtuse? I should have some children, let them beat me just like Rodney said. The Dungeon Master will then read out the flavoured text of the story for the quest. They'll also point out that the light's not on. And we need more light. More light! More light, Crichton!